The conference room fell silent as the $980 million contract lay waiting for signatures. The Arab businessman smiled confidently across at the American millionaire, neither noticing the small girl who had slipped in with her mother. But no one imagined what would come next. Where are you watching this incredible story from? Drop your location in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for more shocking true stories that will leave you speechless. Robert Mason straightened his tie nervously as he entered the gleaming Horizon Tower. At 58, he had built Mason Industries from nothing into a $2. $3 billion manufacturing empire, but today's deal would be his crowning achievement. The merger with Sheikh Abdullah Al Farsi's global conglomerate would secure his legacy and his company's future. "Mr. Mason, they're waiting for you in conference room A," said Jessica, his assistant of 15 years, handing him a leather portfolio. "The final contract copies are inside." "Thanks, Jess," Robert replied, taking a deep breath. 25 years of work comes down to this moment. As he rode the elevator to the 50th floor, Robert thought about the ruthless months of negotiations. Sheikh Abdullah was known for his shrewd business tactics, but the $980 million deal they'd structured seemed fair. Still, something felt off, though Robert couldn't pinpoint what. When the elevator doors opened, Robert saw Nancy Wilson, the building's night-cleaning lady, hurriedly trying to finish vacuuming the hallway. Beside her stood a small girl with bright, intelligent eyes. "Sorry, Mr. Mason," Nancy said, quickly moving the vacuum. "We're almost done." "No problem, Nancy," Robert smiled at the child. "And who's this?" "This is my daughter, Lily. School's out for teacher planning day and my babysitter cancelled. I had no choice but to bring her." Robert knelt down. "Hello, Lily. How old are you?" "7, sir," she replied clearly. "Almost 8. Something about the girl's direct gaze struck Robert. "Well, it's nice to meet you." As Robert entered the conference room, Sheikh Abdullah rose to greet him, his traditional white thobe contrasting with the modern glass and steel surroundings. 5 advisors flanked him, all in impeccable suits. "Mr. Mason, at last, the day has arrived," the sheikh said with a practiced smile. "Shall we proceed?" For 3 hours, attorneys from both sides reviewed the final terms. Robert's team of 4 lawyers meticulously compared each clause against previously agreed terms. Everything seemed in order until a technical issue with the projector interrupted the meeting. "Perhaps a short break while this is resolved?" suggested Abdullah's chief counsel, Ahmed. During the break, Robert stepped into the hallway for some air. Nancy was still cleaning nearby, with Lily sitting quietly in a corner, reading a book that seemed far too advanced for her age. "Big day, Mr. Mason?" Nancy asked. "The biggest," Robert replied, suddenly feeling the weight of the decision. "Once I sign those papers, there's no turning back." As Robert turned to re-enter the conference room, Lily looked up from her book. "Mr. Mason?" her small voice called out. "I think there's something wrong with those papers." Robert stopped, surprised. "What do you mean, Lily?" "Gee, when they put the contract on the screen, I saw something strange on page 457. It looked different from what you were talking about." Robert felt a chill. Page 457 was part of the technical appendix dealing with intellectual property transfers, something few would read carefully. "What did you see, Lily?" Words hidden in small print. Something about irrevocable transfer of all patents, regardless of utilization status. "I like reading contracts. My mum brings old papers home from the recycling bins for me to practice with." Robert stared at the child in disbelief. The blood drained from Robert's face. If what Lily said was true, the clause would give Abdullah complete ownership of not just the agreed-upon patents, but every innovation Mason Industries had ever developed, effectively gutting the company while appearing to save it. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Lily?" Robert asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The girl nodded solemnly. "It was in tiny letters at the bottom, in a different font, almost the same color as the background. Robert felt a mixture of shock and rising anger. He'd heard rumors about Abdullah's business practices, but never imagined he'd attempt something so brazen. The question now was how to proceed without revealing his hand too soon. "Thank you, Lily. You may have just saved my company," Robert said, reaching into his pocket and handing Nancy his business card. "Nancy, please call my office tomorrow. I want to talk about Lily's education." As Robert re-entered the conference room, he maintained a carefully neutral expression. The projector had been fixed, and Abdullah's team looked relaxed. Too relaxed. "Shall we continue, Mr. Mason?" Abdullah smiled. "We were about to review the final appendices." "Actually," Robert said smoothly, "I'd like to go back to the intellectual property section. My team has raised some concerns about the language." A flicker of tension crossed Abdullah's face before he regained his composure. "Of course, although I believe that section was finalized weeks ago." Robert turned to his lead attorney. "James, would you pull up page 457, please? I'd like to review the exact wording." An uncomfortable silence fell as James navigated to the page. Robert studied Abdullah's team carefully. His legal counsel, Ahmed, was suddenly very interested in his tablet, while another advisor whispered something to the sheikh. "Here it is," James announced, displaying the page. To the untrained eye, it looked like standard legal text. "Can you zoom in on the footer, please?" Robert requested. As James magnified the bottom of the page, the hidden clause became visible, exactly as Lily had described. The room went completely still. "Would someone care to explain this?" Robert asked, his voice dangerously calm. Abdullah leaned forward, his expression hardening. "A simple misunderstanding, I'm sure. Perhaps a drafting error by one of our junior attorneys. A drafting error that coincidentally transfers all of my company's intellectual property to yours." Robert's tone was ice cold. "I don't think so." Ahmed intervened smoothly. "Mr. Mason, if there's language that concerns you, we can certainly revise it. We value this partnership too much to let technicalities derail it." "Technicalities." Robert stood up slowly. "You attempted to hide a clause that would have destroyed my company. This meeting is over." Abdullah's composure finally cracked. "You're making a grave mistake, Mason. This deal is the only thing that will save your outdated manufacturing processes. Without our investment, you'll be obsolete within 5 years." The truth in Abdullah's words stung. Robert knew Mason Industries needed modernization, but not at the cost of everything he'd built. "I'll take my chances," Robert replied, gathering his papers. "My attorneys will be in touch about your attempted fraud." As Robert and his team left, Abdullah called out, "You have 72 hours to reconsider, Mason. After that, my offer disappears, and so do your company's prospects." In the hallway, Robert found Nancy finishing her shift, Lily helping by organizing the cleaning supplies. "Mr. Mason, is everything all right?" Nancy asked, noticing his expression. "Thanks to your daughter, yes," Robert replied, then knelt to Lily's level. "Lily, how would you like to visit my factory tomorrow? I think you've earned a proper thank you." The following morning, Robert's black Bentley pulled up outside Nancy and Lily's modest apartment in East Bridgeport. The neighborhood was a stark contrast to the gleaming downtown where Mason Industries headquarters dominated the skyline. Children played on cracked sidewalks while tired buildings watched over them like aging sentinels. Robert had slept little, his mind racing with both gratitude for Lily's intervention and anxiety about his company's future. Abdullah wasn't wrong. Mason Industries needed modernization, and without the merger, securing the necessary capital would be challenging. Nancy opened the door looking surprised at Robert's personal appearance. She wore simple jeans and a sweater, her work uniform replaced by the casual clothes of a mother on her day off. "Mr. Mason." "We weren't expecting you personally," she said, smoothing her hair self-consciously. "Please call me Robert." he replied with a warm smile. "Is Lily ready for her factory tour?" Lily appeared behind her mother, wearing her best dress and clutching a small notebook. Her eyes widened at the sight of Robert. "You really came!" she exclaimed. "Of course," Robert replied. "I always keep my promises, and I wanted to thank you properly for what you did yesterday." During the drive to the factory, Robert observed Lily in the rear-view mirror. She stared out the window, absorbing everything with remarkable intensity for a 7-year-old. "Your daughter has an extraordinary mind," Robert said quietly to Nancy. "The way she spotted that hidden clause. Most of my attorneys missed it." Nancy smiled sadly. "She's always been special. Taught herself to read at 4. By 5, she was going through my community college textbooks. The public school doesn't know what to do with her. She can't be appropriately challenged there." "We've tried," Nancy sighed, "but they don't have programs for children like Lily, and private schools." She trailed off, the financial impossibility hanging unspoken between them. Robert nodded thoughtfully as they arrived at Mason Industries' main manufacturing facility. The complex sprawled across 30 acres, with 6 large buildings housing everything from research and development to final assembly of the precision industrial components that had built Robert's fortune. As they entered the main building, Robert was greeted respectfully by workers who seemed surprised to see him with a cleaning lady and a child. He introduced Nancy and Lily to everyone they met, explaining simply that Lily had helped the company tremendously. "This is where we design our components," Robert explained, showing Lily the engineering department. Engineers worked at computer stations, running complex simulations, while 3D printers produced prototype parts in the background. Lily's eyes lit up. "Can I see how the simulations work?" Robert introduced her to Elena Vasquez, his chief engineer, who seemed amused, but quickly recognized Lily's unusual comprehension. Soon, Lily was asking questions about material stress tolerances that left Elena looking at Robert in astonishment. "She understood concepts it took me years of engineering school to grasp," Eleanor whispered to Robert as Lily examined a prototype. At lunch, in the executive dining room, Robert watched as Lily carefully documented everything she'd seen in her notebook. Her handwriting was neat and precise, her observations detailed beyond her years. "Mr. Mason," Lily said suddenly, looking up from her notes, "your machines in Building C are using an inefficient process flow. If you reorganize the assembly sequence, you could increase production by approximately 22%. Robert stared at her. "How could you possibly know that?" "I counted the time between operations and noticed the bottleneck. It's simple mathematics." Nancy looked embarrassed. "Lily, Mr. Mason's engineers know their business better than—" "Actually," Robert interrupted, "we've been having efficiency problems in Building C for months. Elena's team is working on solutions." He leaned toward Lily. "Would you show me what you mean?" By late afternoon, Robert had witnessed something he could scarcely believe. Using colored markers and large sheets of paper provided by Elena, Lily had mapped out a completely reorganized workflow for Building C's assembly line. The child's intuitive grasp of process optimization was unlike anything Robert had seen in 40 years of manufacturing. "If we implement these changes," Elena said, reviewing Lily's diagrams, "she's right. We could see a 20 to 25% efficiency improvement. Possibly more." Robert watched Lily explaining her concept to 2 senior engineers, her small finger tracing paths on the diagram with complete confidence. Something profound was happening, something beyond a simple thank you tour. "Nancy," Robert said quietly, guiding her to a private corner of the conference room, "your daughter has an extraordinary gift. This level of analytical ability isn't just rare, it's exceptional." Nancy nodded, her expression a mixture of pride and resignation. "I know, but what can I do? I'm a single mother working 2 jobs. The gifted programs she qualifies for all have waiting lists or tuition I can't afford." Robert considered his next words carefully. What if I offered to help? Mason Industries has an educational foundation. We could arrange a scholarship for Lily at Westridge Academy. It's the best private school in the state for gifted children. Nancy's eyes widened. Westridge? But that costs over $50,000 a year, yes. The foundation would cover everything, tuition, books, transportation, whatever she needs. Why would you do this? Nancy asked, suspicious of sudden generosity from a man worth billions. Robert gestured toward Lily. Because talent like hers shouldn't be wasted, and because she saved my company yesterday, I owe her far more than a scholarship. As they spoke, Robert's phone vibrated with an incoming call. Seeing Abdullah's name on the screen, he excused himself and stepped into the hallway. Mason, he answered coldly. Have you reconsidered my offer? Abdullah asked without preamble. After your attempted deception? Not a chance. Abdullah's voice hardened. Then perhaps you should check your company's stock price. The market seems to have learned about our failed deal. Robert quickly pulled up the stock ticker on his phone. Mason Industries shares had plummeted 18% since morning. Someone had leaked news of the collapsed merger. This is just the beginning, Abdullah continued. By week's end, your shareholders will be demanding your resignation for failing to secure this deal. You have until tomorrow to accept my original terms. The original terms included the hidden clause stealing my patents, Robert growled. A regrettable misunderstanding. The new contract will be cleaner, but the price has changed. $780 million now, not $980 million. Your position weakens by the hour. After the call ended, Robert returned to the conference room, trying to mask his concern. The situation was worse than he'd anticipated. Abdullah wasn't just walking away. He was actively working to devalue Mason Industries to force Robert's hand. Is everything okay? Nancy asked, noticing his expression. Just business complications, Robert replied, forcing a smile. Then, watching Lily still engrossed with the engineers, a thought struck him. Nancy, could I speak with Lily alone for a few minutes? There's something I'd like to discuss with her. Nancy hesitated, then nodded. Of course. Robert led Lily to his office overlooking the factory floor. He pulled out a chair for her at his conference table, then sat across from her. Lily, I have a problem that needs a very smart person to solve. Would you be willing to help me again? The girl's eyes lit up with determination. What kind of problem, Mr. Mason? Robert simplified the situation for Lily, explaining how Sheikh Abdullah was now trying to force him to accept a worse deal by driving down Mason Industries' stock price. He carefully omitted the more complex financial details, but emphasized the unfairness of Abdullah's tactics. So he's still trying to trick you, just in a different way, Lily summarized, her forehead wrinkled in concentration. Exactly, Robert nodded, surprised by how quickly she grasped the essence of corporate maneuvering. And I need to find a way to strengthen my position before tomorrow. Lily tapped her pencil against her notebook. You need leverage, she said, using a word that seemed out of place coming from a 7-year-old. Something he wants more than he wants to hurt you. Robert raised an eyebrow. That's precisely right. But what leverage could I possibly have against Abdullah's resources? Lily thought for a moment. What does his company make that your company needs? Advanced manufacturing robotics, primarily. His automation technology is years ahead of American companies. And what does your company make that his company needs? Robert started to answer automatically, then stopped, struck by the simplicity of her question. What did Abdullah actually need from Mason Industries? The merger had been presented as Abdullah doing Robert a favor, modernizing an outdated American manufacturer. But Abdullah was too shrewd to pursue deals without significant personal benefit. The precision components, Robert said slowly, realization dawning. We make specialized parts for aerospace applications that can't be easily replicated. Abdullah's conglomerate recently won contracts to build components for the European Space Agency, but they lack the precision engineering capabilities. Lily smiled. So he needs your expertise just as much as you need his robots. Robert stared at the child in astonishment. With one simple question, she had cut through months of negotiation posturing to expose the truth. Abdullah's aggressive tactics weren't those of someone holding all the cards. They were the moves of someone who also needed the deal to succeed. "Lily, you're a genius," Robert said, genuinely impressed. "But knowing we have leverage and using it effectively are different challenges." "Why don't you talk to other robot companies?" Lily suggested. "If Mr. Abdullah thinks you don't need his robots, maybe he'll be nicer." Robert's phone buzzed with a message from his assistant. "Emergency board meeting, called for 8 a.m. tomorrow. Shareholders concerned about stock drop and merger collapse." Time was running out. Abdullah had clearly been planning this pressure campaign, perhaps even before the hidden clause was discovered. Robert needed a counter-strategy immediately. He looked at Lily, who was now sketching something in her notebook. "What are you drawing?" "A different kind of robot," she replied matter-of-factly. "I was thinking about the machines I saw today. They're very strong, but not very smart. What if you made them smarter without Mr. Abdullah's help?" Robert leaned forward to examine her sketch. It wasn't just a child's drawing. It was a surprisingly sophisticated conceptual design for modifying Mason's existing equipment with enhanced sensor arrays and control systems. "Where did you learn about this technology?" he asked, amazed. Lily shrugged. "I read a lot of science magazines at the library, and there were diagrams on the computers in your engineering department today." As Robert studied the drawing, a plan began forming in his mind. Abdullah was counting on him having no alternatives to the merger. But what if he could demonstrate a viable alternative path to modernization, one that didn't require Abdullah's technology? "Lily, would you mind if I showed this to Eleanor? I think you might be onto something important." By evening, Robert's office had transformed into an impromptu war room. Elena and her top engineers were examining Lily's concept, which had evolved from a simple sketch into a potential technological breakthrough. Nancy watched in astonishment as her daughter held her own in technical discussions with people 3 decades her senior. "It's theoretically sound," Elena concluded after hours of analysis. "Adapting existing infrastructure rather than replacing it entirely could save billions in capital expenditures. We'd sacrifice some efficiency compared to Abdullah's systems, but we'd retain full control of our intellectual property and production." "How quickly could we produce a working prototype?" Robert asked. "With an all-hands approach? Perhaps 3 weeks." "We need something tangible by tomorrow morning's board meeting," Robert said firmly. Elena looked skeptical. "That's impossible." "Nothing's impossible," Lily piped up, "just highly improbable." The Mason Industries headquarters buzzed with unprecedented activity throughout the night. Under Elena's direction, a team of 30 engineers worked frantically to build a functional demonstration model based on Lily's concept. The goal wasn't a complete prototype, but enough to show the board that a viable alternative to Abdullah's technology existed. Robert stayed with them, making calls to key board members to secure their support. Nancy had initially insisted on taking Lily home, but the girl had pleaded to remain, her eyes bright with excitement despite the late hour. Eventually, Nancy relented, and mother and daughter were given a comfortable office where Lily could rest if she grew tired, though she showed no signs of fatigue as midnight approached. "She's still going strong," Robert remarked to Nancy around 1 a.m., nodding toward where Lily sat with 2 engineers, modifying code on a laptop. She doesn't usually get opportunities like this," Nancy replied, watching her daughter with a mixture of pride and wonder. "At school, they tell her to slow down, not to ask so many questions, to let other kids have a turn." Here, for the first time, she's being encouraged to run as fast as her mind can carry her. By 4:30 a.m., the demonstration unit was taking shape. A modified robotic arm from Mason's existing production line, enhanced with additional sensors and a completely rewritten control system. Elena looked exhausted but triumphant as the system executed its first successful precision movement sequence. "It's working," she told Robert, who had just returned from a brief nap in his office. "The response time is 38% faster than our current systems, and the precision is nearly at Abdullah's specifications. Not quite there yet, but enough to prove the concept is sound." Robert squeezed her shoulder gratefully. "You've done the impossible, Elena." "And not me," she said, nodding toward Lily, who was curled up asleep on a couch nearby, her mother gently covering her with a jacket. That child sees patterns the rest of us miss. It's as if manufacturing processes are transparent to her." As dawn broke, Robert prepared for the board meeting, reviewing financial projections and technical specifications. He'd arranged for Elena to present the demonstration prototype, hoping its existence would convince the board that Mason Industries had alternatives to Abdullah's merger. Just before 7:30 a.m., as Robert was making final preparations in the boardroom, his phone rang. It was James Miller, his head of security. "Sir, Sheikh Abdullah and 3 associates just entered the building. They're demanding to see you before the board meeting." Robert's jaw tightened. "Escort them to my office. I'll meet them there." When Robert entered his office, Abdullah was standing by the window overlooking the city, his back to the door. His 3 associates, Ahmed and 2 others Robert didn't recognize, were seated. "An unexpected visit, Sheikh Abdullah," Robert said coolly, "especially at this hour." Abdullah turned, his expression unreadable. "I thought we might have one final conversation before your board forces your hand." "My board doesn't force my hand. I run Mason Industries." Abdullah smiled thinly. "For now. But after they see these, your position may weaken." He nodded to Ahmed, who opened a folder and extracted several documents. "Financial projections showing Mason Industries' inevitable decline without modernization. Technical analyses demonstrating how quickly your manufacturing processes are becoming obsolete. And profiles of 3 potential replacement CEOs who would be more amenable to our original arrangement." Robert glanced at the documents without touching them. "Impressive homework, but it won't matter." "No!" Abdullah raised an eyebrow. "Your stock has fallen another 7% in pre-market trading this morning. By noon, your company valuation will have dropped nearly $400 million in 2 days. Your shareholders are panicking." "My shareholders understand value beyond quarterly fluctuations. We've weathered worse." Abdullah stepped closer. "Accept the revised offer, Mason. $780 million, clean contract, no hidden clauses. I give you my personal guarantee." "Your personal guarantee?" Robert allowed himself a small smile. "Like the one you offered before trying to steal my patents?" Before Abdullah could respond, the door opened and Elena entered, looking apologetic for the interruption. "I'm sorry, Mr. Mason, but you asked to be notified when the demonstration was ready." Robert nodded. "Thank you, Elena. Please tell the board I'll be there shortly." After she left, he turned back to Abdullah. "If you'll excuse me, I have a meeting to attend." "What demonstration?" Abdullah asked sharply. "Something that might interest my board," Robert replied vaguely, enjoying the flicker of uncertainty that crossed Abdullah's face. "You're welcome to join us, of course." In the boardroom, 12 board members waited anxiously. Large windows revealed the awakening city, golden morning light reflecting off distant skyscrapers. At one end of the long mahogany table, a space had been cleared for Elena's demonstration unit. Robert entered with Abdullah and his associates trailing behind him. Nancy sat in a corner, Lily beside her looking sleepy but excited. The board members exchanged confused glances at the presence of a cleaning lady and child at this critical meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert began, standing at the head of the table, thank you for convening on such short notice. I understand there are concerns about the collapsed merger negotiations and the impact on our stock price. Margaret Wilson, the board's longest-serving member, spoke first. Concerns is an understatement, Robert. We're hemorrhaging market value. Shareholders are demanding explanations. And you deserve them, Robert acknowledged. First, allow me to introduce Sheikh Abdullah Al-Farsi, who has generously offered to join us this morning. Abdullah nodded slightly, his expression guarded. 2 days ago, Robert continued, we discovered a hidden clause in the merger agreement that would have transferred all Mason Industries' intellectual property to Abdullah's conglomerate, essentially gutting our company while appearing to save it. Murmurs spread around the table. Abdullah stepped forward. A regrettable misunderstanding that has been corrected in the revised agreement. A $200 million reduction in the offer is quite a price for a misunderstanding, Robert noted dryly. Market realities, Abdullah countered smoothly. Your position has weakened considerably since our last meeting. Robert turned back to the board. What Sheikh Abdullah doesn't know is that overnight, Mason Industries' position has actually strengthened dramatically. He gestured to Elena. Dr. Vasquez will explain. Elena approached the demonstration unit. Board members, what you're seeing is a modified version of our existing robotic manufacturing arm. Using a revolutionary control system approach, we've achieved precision metrics that approach those of Abdullah's much more expensive technology, at less than 40% of the implementation cost. She activated the system, and the robotic arm performed a series of intricate movements with remarkable speed and accuracy, placing tiny components with perfect precision. This is merely a proof of concept, Elena continued, but it demonstrates that we have viable alternatives to the proposed merger. With further development, we could implement a modernization program independently, maintaining full control of our intellectual property and manufacturing processes. Abdullah's expression darkened. This is nothing but a desperate stunt. A functional prototype requires months of development, not a single night. Under normal circumstances, yes, Robert agreed, but we had an exceptional consultant. He gestured toward Lily, who sat up straighter under the sudden attention. This is Lily Wilson. 2 days ago, she identified the hidden clause in your contract that would have destroyed my company. Yesterday, she conceptualized the enhanced control system you just witnessed. Abdullah looked at the child with disbelief. You expect us to believe a little girl designed an advanced manufacturing system? Robert smiled. I don't expect you to believe anything, Sheikh. The demonstration speaks for itself. For the next 30 minutes, Elena detailed the technical specifications and projected implementation timeline. The board members' initial skepticism gradually gave way to cautious optimism. Even Margaret Wilson, initially the most vocal critic, seemed impressed by the potential cost savings compared to Abdullah's proposal. When Elena finished, Robert addressed Abdullah directly. Sheikh Abdullah, I appreciate your interest in Mason Industries. However, given these developments, I believe we should suspend merger discussions indefinitely. Abdullah's carefully maintained composure finally broke. This is absurd. You're risking your entire company on a child's drawing and an overnight prototype. My offer expires at noon today, Mason. After that, I will personally ensure that your stock price continues to fall until your board has no choice but to remove you. The threat hung in the air. Board members shifted uncomfortably, glancing between Robert and Abdullah. Robert remained calm. Before anyone makes hasty decisions, there's one more person we should hear from. He turned to Lily. Lily, would you mind sharing what you told me yesterday about leverage? All eyes turned to the small girl as she stood up, clutching her notebook. Despite her evident nervousness, her voice was clear and confident. Sheikh Abdullah needs Mason Industries just as much as Mason Industries needs his robots, she stated simply. His company won contracts with the European Space Agency but can't make the precision parts required. That's why he wants Mr. Mason's company. Abdullah stared at the child, momentarily speechless. The boardroom fell into stunned silence. Several board members turned to Abdullah, whose face had gone rigid with barely contained fury. The simplicity of Lily's assessment had stripped away months of carefully constructed negotiation, posturing in seconds. Robert seized the moment. Is she correct, Sheikh Abdullah? Is your interest in Mason Industries perhaps more mutually beneficial than you've represented? Abdullah's chief counsel, Ahmed, whispered urgently in his ear, but Abdullah silenced him with a sharp gesture. When he spoke, his voice was controlled but tight with anger. The child has a vivid imagination. My conglomerate has numerous manufacturing capabilities, but not our precision engineering expertise for aerospace components, Robert pressed. Specifically, the proprietary alloy injection molding process that we've perfected over 20 years, the exact technology you'd need for those European Space Agency contracts. Margaret Wilson leaned forward. Robert, what exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we've been negotiating from a position of perceived weakness when the reality is quite different, Robert replied, never taking his eyes off Abdullah. Sheikh Abdullah's aggressive tactics, the hidden contract clause, the orchestrated stock price manipulation, these aren't the actions of someone doing us a favor. They're the desperate moves of someone who needs this deal to succeed almost as much as we do. Abdullah's jaw clenched. This is preposterous. Is it? Robert picked up a folder from the table. These are the technical specifications for the ESA contracts your company won 6 months ago. Our analysis shows that without our precision engineering capabilities, you cannot possibly meet these requirements by the contractual deadline of next March. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Abdullah's face. How did you obtain those specifications? Robert smiled slightly. Mason Industries has been in aerospace manufacturing for decades. We have relationships throughout the industry. He turned back to the board. Ladies and gentlemen, I propose that instead of accepting Sheikh Abdullah's reduced offer under duress, we consider a more equitable partnership structure, one that acknowledges the mutual benefits to both companies. The atmosphere in the room had shifted dramatically. Board members who had arrived that morning prepared to pressure Robert into accepting Abdullah's terms were now reconsidering the situation. Abdullah sensed the change and moved quickly to regain control. Perhaps I've been overly aggressive in my approach, he conceded with a tight smile. I'm certainly open to discussing a more equitable arrangement. Margaret Wilson wasn't easily swayed. While this is all very dramatic, Robert, it doesn't change the fact that our stock has plummeted. Shareholders will demand accountability. Actually, Robert replied, I believe the market will respond quite positively to news that Mason Industries is pursuing both an innovative internal modernization program and a potential strategic partnership with Abdullah's conglomerate on our terms. By noon, the board meeting had evolved into a completely different kind of negotiation. Abdullah, recognizing his position had weakened, adopted a more conciliatory approach. The initial merger proposal was scrapped entirely, replaced by discussions of a joint venture focused specifically on aerospace manufacturing. As the meeting adjourned, Robert found Lily and Nancy waiting in his office. Lily was examining a detailed model of Mason Industries' first factory that sat on a pedestal near the window. How did it go? Nancy asked anxiously. Remarkably well, Robert replied with a smile. The board unanimously rejected Abdullah's merger offer and authorized me to pursue both the modernization program based on Lily's concept and a potential joint venture with Abdullah's company, with carefully defined parameters to protect our intellectual property. Nancy looked relieved. And Lily's scholarship to Westridge Academy? Already in motion. The Mason Educational Foundation will cover everything: tuition, books, transportation, extracurricular activities. She can start next semester. While they spoke, Lily continued studying the factory model, her fingers tracing the miniature assembly lines with fascination. "There's something else I'd like to discuss," Robert said more quietly. "I'm establishing a special innovation division within Mason Industries, focused on long-term manufacturing evolution. Given what Lily has demonstrated over the past 48 hours, I'd like to offer her a role as a junior consultant." Nancy looked stunned. "A job? But she's 7 years old." "More of an internship," Robert clarified. 2 afternoons a week after school, working with Eleanor's engineering team. Completely optional, of course, and only if Lily is interested. They both looked at the child, who had been listening while pretending not to. "Would I get to make the robots smarter?" Lily asked, her eyes bright with excitement. "That would be exactly your job," Robert confirmed with a smile. 3 months later, Mason Industries was transformed. The stock price had not only recovered, but reached an all-time high following the announcement of both the innovative modernization program and a carefully structured joint venture with Abdullah's conglomerate. The financial press, which had initially predicted disaster, now hailed Robert Mason as a visionary who had reinvented American manufacturing. The Special Innovation Division occupied the entire 6th floor of the company's research building. Glass walls revealed teams of engineers working on various aspects of advanced automation, their excitement palpable even to casual observers. At the center of this hive of activity was a special laboratory where, twice a week, a small girl with bright eyes and endless questions collaborated with some of the finest manufacturing minds in the country. Robert stood in the observation area, overlooking the main engineering floor, watching Lily work with Elena on a new sensor array design. Despite the 3-decade age gap between them, they collaborated as intellectual equals, each bringing unique perspectives to the challenges they faced. "Remarkable, isn't it?" said a voice beside him. Robert turned to find Sheikh Abdullah, who had arrived for their quarterly joint venture review. "Indeed," Robert agreed, their previous animosity having evolved into a cautious, mutual respect. "She sees manufacturing processes in ways that continually surprise us." Abdullah studied the child thoughtfully. "In my culture, we have stories of children blessed by Allah with special gifts, minds that perceive the world differently. I believe your Lily may be such a child." The comment surprised Robert. It was perhaps the most personal thing Abdullah had ever said to him. "The proposed sensor array modifications," Abdullah continued, gesturing toward where Lily and Elena worked, "they're beyond anything my engineers have conceived. If implemented successfully, they could improve precision by at least 15%, while reducing production costs. That's Lily's specialty. Finding efficiencies others miss," Robert replied. "The scholarship at Westridge Academy is going well too. They've created a custom curriculum for her, though they admit she's challenging even their most advanced programs." Abdullah nodded. "And her mother? How is she adjusting to her daughter's sudden prominence?" "Nancy's remarkable in her own right," Robert said. "She's enrolled in engineering courses at the university, on full scholarship from our foundation. Turns out, Lily's analytical abilities may be partially inherited. Nancy had abandoned her own education to raise Lily alone after her husband died." Their conversation was interrupted as Lily noticed them and waved excitedly. She whispered something to Elena, who nodded with an encouraging smile. A moment later, Lily was bounding up the stairs to the observation area, a tablet clutched in her small hands. "Mr. Mason, Sheikh Abdullah, we've solved the thermal regulation problem," she announced breathlessly. "Have you now?" Abdullah replied, his normally stern features softening as he knelt to the child's level. "Yes, everyone was trying to cool the entire system, but that's inefficient," Lily explained, her words tumbling out rapidly. "Instead, we designed micro-cooling channels that target only the components that generate excess heat. Look." She thrust her tablet forward, displaying a complex three-dimensional model that rotated to show intricate cooling pathways threaded through a manufacturing component. Abdullah studied the design with genuine interest, occasionally asking technical questions that Lily answered with surprising precision. Robert watched their interaction with quiet satisfaction. 3 months ago, these two had been adversaries. Now, united by respect for a child's extraordinary gift, they were collaborating on technology that could revolutionize manufacturing. Later that afternoon, after Abdullah had departed, Robert found Lily in the company cafeteria. She sat alone at a table, surrounded by papers covered in calculations, absently nibbling a cookie while working on a new problem. "How's it going, Lily?" he asked, sliding into the seat across from her. She looked up with a bright smile. "I'm designing a completely new kind of robot arm. One that moves more like a human arm, with flexible joints instead of rigid connections. Elena says it's really hard to build, but I think we can do it." Robert nodded, smiling at her enthusiasm. "I'm sure you can, but I actually wanted to talk to you about something else. Your 8th birthday is next week, isn't it?" Lily nodded. "Mom says we're having a small party at our new apartment." After Lily's contribution to Mason Industries, Robert had arranged for Nancy and Lily to move into a comfortable condominium, closer to both the company and Westridge Academy. It was still modest by his standards, as Nancy had refused anything too extravagant, insisting on maintaining a normal childhood for Lily despite her extraordinary circumstances. "I was wondering if you might like a special birthday present," Robert said. "The Mason Educational Foundation is establishing a new program for exceptionally gifted children, providing resources, mentorship, and educational opportunities they might not otherwise access. I'd like to name it after you, the Lily Wilson Initiative for Exceptional Minds." Lily's eyes widened. "After me, but I didn't do anything special. You saved $1 billion company with your observation skills. You conceptualized technology that's transforming manufacturing, and you did it all before your 8th birthday. I'd say that's pretty special." On Lily's 8th birthday, the Mason Industries Auditorium was filled to capacity. What had begun as a small announcement about the Lily Wilson Initiative for Exceptional Minds had evolved into something much larger. The story of the cleaning lady's daughter, who saved $1 billion company, had captured public imagination, drawing national media attention and sparking conversations about how many brilliant children might be overlooked due to economic circumstances. Nancy stood backstage, nervously adjusting her new dress, her first designer outfit, a gift from Elena for the occasion. Beside her, Lily seemed remarkably calm in her blue birthday dress, reviewing note cards for her speech with the focus of someone 3 times her age. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Nancy asked her daughter for the 3rd time that morning. "There must be 200 people out there, plus all those cameras." Lily nodded confidently. "It's important, Mum. Mr. Mason says this could help other kids like me." Nancy squeezed her daughter's shoulder, filled with a complex mixture of pride and apprehension. The past 3 months had brought changes she could never have imagined. A new home, her return to engineering studies, and most significantly, watching her daughter's extraordinary mind finally receive the recognition and nurturing it deserved. Robert approached them, looking presidential in a tailored suit. "Ready, birthday girl?" He asked Lily with a warm smile. "Ready," Lily confirmed, straightening her shoulders. The governor just arrived, Robert told Nancy, along with the state education secretary and representatives from 3 major technology companies. Your daughter has attracted quite an audience. B. As Robert led them toward the stage, Nancy whispered, I still can't believe all this is happening because Lily spotted a hidden clause in a contract. It's happening because your daughter has a remarkable mind that was nearly overlooked, Robert corrected gently. That hidden clause was just the universe's way of making sure we didn't miss her. The audience rose in applause as Robert took the podium, with Lily and Nancy seated behind him alongside Eleanor, Sheikh Abdullah, and several board members. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert began, 3 months ago, Mason Industries faced a critical juncture. Our future seemed to depend entirely on a merger that, as it turned out, concealed potential disaster within its fine print. He paused, glancing at Abdullah, who nodded slightly in acknowledgement of their shared history. That disaster was averted not by our experienced attorneys or our corporate due diligence team, but by a 7-year-old girl who happened to be in the room because her mother, our building's cleaning staff, had no childcare that day. Cameras flashed as Robert continued, recounting how Lily had not only identified the hidden clause, but subsequently helped revolutionize the company's manufacturing processes. The audience listened with rapt attention, many taking notes or recording the speech on their phones. The Lily Wilson Initiative for Exceptional Minds, Robert explained, will identify children with extraordinary analytical abilities, particularly those from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, and provide them with educational opportunities, mentorship, and resources to develop their gifts. Because we must ask ourselves, how many Lilies are out there right now, their brilliant minds constrained by circumstances beyond their control? When Lily stepped up to the microphone, standing on a small platform to reach it, the room fell silent. She looked tiny behind the massive podium, but her voice was clear and confident. 3 months ago, I was just a girl who liked to read contracts from my mum's recycling bin, she began, drawing appreciative laughter from the audience. Now people keep calling me a genius, but I don't think that's right. I just see things differently sometimes. She spoke for exactly 4 minutes, a speech she had written herself and memorized, though she kept the note cards in her hand for security. She talked about her experiences at Westridge Academy, her work with the engineers at Mason Industries, and most passionately about other children she knew with special abilities who lacked opportunities. My friend Marcus can do complex math instantly in his head, but his school doesn't have an advanced math program. My neighbor Zoe creates amazing robots from trash, but can't afford the engineering camp she wants to attend. There are so many kids like us who just need someone to notice what they can do. As Lily concluded her speech, Nancy wiped tears from her eyes, overwhelmed by her daughter's composure and eloquence. Robert stepped forward to announce the initial funding commitment, $50 million from the Mason Foundation, with matching contributions from 3 technology companies and Sheikh Abdullah's conglomerate. The reception afterward was a whirlwind of interviews, congratulations, and networking. Educational experts engaged Lily in conversations about curriculum development for gifted children. Technology executives discussed manufacturing innovations with Elena. State officials spoke with Robert about potential public-private partnerships to identify exceptional children in underserved communities. Near the end of the event, Sheikh Abdullah approached Nancy, who stood watching her daughter from a quiet corner. "Your child has changed many lives," he said, his tone respectful, "including my own." Nancy looked at him curiously. "How so?" Abdullah smiled slightly. "I have spent decades building my business through aggressive tactics, viewing partnerships as games to be won rather than relationships to be nurtured. Your daughter's insight, delivered with a child's unvarnished honesty, has caused me to reconsider this approach." Before Nancy could respond, Lily rushed over, her face flushed with excitement. "Mom, the governor wants to create a special program for finding kids like me in every school, and Sheikh Abdullah is going to help fund it in other countries too." Abdullah nodded. "Beginning with schools in my homeland. Talent knows no boundaries or backgrounds." As the event concluded, Robert found Lily sitting alone in a quiet corner of the reception hall, looking suddenly tired after hours of excitement. He sat beside her, loosening his tie. "Happy birthday, Lily. Was it everything you hoped for?" She considered the question thoughtfully. "It was better, but there's still so much to do." "What do you mean?" Lily's expression grew serious. "We need to fix the robots in Building D next, and design that new flexible arm, and find more kids for the initiative, and—" Robert laughed, raising his hands in surrender. "One thing at a time. Even brilliant minds need birthday cake." Lily grinned, suddenly just an 8-year-old girl again, with extra frosting. As they walked toward the celebration, Robert marveled at the chain of events a single observant child had set in motion. In just 3 months, Mason Industries had been transformed, a groundbreaking educational initiative launched, and an international partnership forged, all because a cleaning lady had no childcare one fateful afternoon. Some would call it luck, Robert thought. But he preferred to see it as the universe's way of reminding humanity that extraordinary potential often hides in the most unexpected places, waiting only for someone to notice. 6 months after Lily's 8th birthday celebration, the Lily Wilson Initiative for Exceptional Minds had identified 73 children across the country with extraordinary analytical abilities. Each child received a tailored educational program, mentorship from industry professionals, and the resources needed to develop their unique talents. The initiative had become Robert's passion project, consuming much of his time outside of running Mason Industries. On a crisp autumn morning, Robert sat in his office reviewing the quarterly reports for both the company and the initiative. Mason Industries' stock had stabilized at record levels. The joint venture with Abdullah's conglomerate was exceeding expectations, and the modernization program based on Lily's concepts was revolutionizing the manufacturing industry. By any measure, it was an extraordinary success story. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Elena entered, looking unusually concerned. "We have a situation with Lily," she said without preamble. Robert frowned. "What kind of situation?" "She's stuck on a problem. I've never seen her like this before." This was surprising news. In the months since Lily had begun working with the engineering team, she had consistently found solutions to problems that had stumped experienced professionals. Her unique perspective and intuitive understanding of manufacturing processes seemed to know no limits. "What's the problem she's working on?" Robert asked, already standing to follow Elena. "The flexible robotic arm concept. We've been prototyping based on her designs for 3 months, but there's a fundamental issue with the materials science. The composite materials aren't performing as anticipated under stress testing." When they reached the innovation lab, they found Lily sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by scattered papers covered in calculations and diagrams. Her expression was uncharacteristically frustrated, her normally neat handwriting becoming increasingly chaotic across the pages. Nancy sat nearby, watching her daughter with concern. "She's been like this for 2 days. Nancy told Robert quietly. "She barely slept last night, kept waking up to jot down new calculations. I've never seen her unable to solve something before." Robert approached carefully and sat down on the floor beside Lily. "Tough problem?" She looked up, her eyes tired but determined. "The materials are wrong. Everything I designed should work, but the molecular structure of the composite material degrades under repeated stress. It's frustrating. Robert picked up one of her diagrams, a detailed molecular structure far beyond anything an 8-year-old should comprehend. Maybe this is a good thing, Lily. She frowned. How can failing be good? Because you're learning something important, that innovation isn't always straightforward. Sometimes we hit walls that can't be overcome with our current knowledge or technology. So, we just give up? Her voice held an edge of defiance. Not at all. We redirect. Robert pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. I know someone who might be able to help, Dr. Sarah Chen at MIT. She's pioneering research in advanced composite materials. Later that week, Lily sat in a state-of-the-art materials science laboratory at MIT, watching intently as Dr. Chen demonstrated properties of various experimental composites. Robert had arranged the visit as a special consultation, though Dr. Chen had initially been skeptical about collaborating with an 8-year-old. That skepticism had lasted approximately 15 minutes into their first meeting, dissolved by Lily's sophisticated understanding of molecular engineering concepts. Now, 3 days into their collaboration, Dr. Chen treated Lily as she would a graduate student, explaining complex concepts without simplification. The breakthrough you're looking for might not exist yet, Dr. Chen explained, showing Lily microscope images of material samples. Sometimes we need to invent new materials for new applications, rather than trying to force existing ones to behave differently. Lily absorbed this information with growing excitement. So instead of adapting my design to existing materials, we could develop new materials specifically for your design, Dr. Chen finished with a smile. That's how paradigm shifts happen in engineering. By the end of the week, Lily and Dr. Chen had developed a theoretical framework for an entirely new class of composite materials, with properties ideally suited for flexible robotic applications. The actual development and testing would take months, possibly years, but the conceptual breakthrough was significant enough that Dr. Chen immediately began drafting a research proposal to secure funding. When Robert arrived to take Lily home, Dr. Chen pulled him aside. I've been teaching at MIT for 20 years, she said quietly. I've worked with brilliant students, child prodigies, genius-level intellects. But Lily, she's different. It's not just her intelligence, it's how she perceives problems, approaching them from angles most trained scientists would never consider. Robert nodded. That's what makes the initiative so important. How many children like Lily never get the opportunity to develop their gifts? Doctor. Chen hesitated, then added, There's something else you should know. Lily shared her school experiences with me. Even at Westridge Academy, she's struggling socially. The other students, even in the gifted program, can't relate to how her mind works. She's lonely. Robert watched Lily gathering her notes, her small face serious as she organized her work with methodical precision. For all her intellectual gifts, she was still a child who needed friendship, acceptance, and a sense of belonging. Perhaps, Robert said thoughtfully, the initiative needs to address more than just academic development. The solution to Lily's social isolation came from an unexpected direction. During a quarterly review meeting with Sheikh Abdullah, Robert mentioned Dr. Chen's concerns about Lily's lack of peer connections. This is not surprising, Abdullah replied thoughtfully. Such exceptional children often walk a solitary path. Robert nodded. We're providing all the academic resources she needs, but we've neglected the social component. She needs to interact with other children who understand her, who see the world as she does. Abdullah was silent for a moment, then said, Perhaps I can help with this. Within my educational foundation in Dubai, we have identified several extraordinary children similar to Lily, including my nephew Tariq, who at 10 years old has revolutionized our approach to water desalination technology. This conversation led to the creation of the Global Exceptional Minds Network, a virtual community connecting the children identified through the Lily Wilson Initiative with similarly gifted children from Abdullah's programs in the Middle East, and eventually from partner organizations worldwide. Weekly video conferences allowed these remarkable young minds to share ideas, collaborate on projects, and most importantly, form friendships with peers who understood their unique perspective on the world. For Lily, the impact was immediate and profound. Within weeks, she had formed particularly strong connections with Tariq from Dubai, Minseo from South Korea, and Gabriela from Brazil, each with their own exceptional abilities in different areas of science and technology. Their collaborative projects soon exceeded anything the adult mentors had anticipated, with innovations emerging from the children's unfettered creativity and diverse perspectives. Nancy noticed the change in her daughter immediately. "She's happier," she told Robert one afternoon, as they watched Lily engaged in an animated video discussion with her new friends. "For the first time, she's not trying to hide her abilities or slow down so others can keep up. She can just be herself." The global network soon became the most successful aspect of the initiative, expanding to include weekly challenges where teams of gifted children from different countries tackled real-world problems. Corporate sponsors provided resources and implementation support for the most promising solutions, with several children already receiving provisional patents for their innovations. By early spring, nearly a year after Lily had first spotted the hidden clause in Abdullah's contract, Mason Industries hosted the first in-person summit for the global network. 34 children from 17 countries, all between the ages of 7 and 12, gathered at the company's headquarters for a week of collaboration, mentorship, and friendship. Robert watched with profound satisfaction as Lily gave her friends from around the world a tour of the Innovation Lab. Her previous shyness had vanished, replaced by confident enthusiasm as she explained her latest projects. These children understood each other in ways that even the most supportive adults in their lives could not fully comprehend. "Your initiative has exceeded all expectations," Sheikh Abdullah commented, standing beside Robert as they observed the children. "When I look at them, I see the future of global innovation." Robert nodded. "More importantly, I see happy children who no longer feel like outsiders in their own communities." The summit culminated in a collaborative project that none of the organizers had anticipated. Led by Lily and Tariq, the children proposed the creation of a dedicated innovation institute specifically designed around their unique learning needs and collaborative methods, a place where they could work together in person on a regular basis rather than connecting virtually from around the world. "We learn differently," Lily explained to the assembled adults, standing confidently at a podium with her peers gathered behind her in support. "Traditional schools, even the best ones for gifted children, are still built around outdated educational models. We need something new." The children had prepared a comprehensive proposal, complete with curriculum frameworks, collaborative workspace designs, and a rotating residency model that would allow participants to continue living with their families while spending intensive collaboration periods at the Institute. "We're not asking you to build this for us," Tariq added, stepping forward to stand beside Lily. "We're asking you to build it with us, because we know how our minds work better than anyone else." Robert and Abdullah exchanged glances, both recognizing the moment as pivotal. The children weren't just asking for resources, they were asserting their right to help shape their own educational future. Later that evening, after the formal presentations had concluded, Robert found Lily sitting alone on a bench in the company's rooftop garden, looking up at the stars. "That was quite a proposal you and your friends put together," he said, sitting beside her. "Do you think it's possible?" she asked, her voice smaller and more uncertain than it had been during the presentation. "I think," Robert replied carefully, "that the 34 most brilliant children I've ever encountered just provided a roadmap for reimagining education. It would be foolish not to follow it." Lily smiled, looking relieved. "We've been working on it for months, ever since the network started. Everyone contributed ideas from their own experiences." "I noticed," Robert said, "the most impressive part wasn't the proposal itself, though that was extraordinary. It was how you all collaborated across languages, cultures, and distances to create something greater than any of you could have achieved alone." Lily considered this. "That's how all great things happen, isn't it? People working together, each bringing their different gifts." Robert nodded, struck once again by her wisdom. "That's exactly right, and it's why your institute will become a reality." The Mason Al-Farsi Institute for Exceptional Minds opened its doors 14 months after Lily had first spotted the hidden clause in Abdullah's contract. Located on a spacious campus midway between Mason Industries headquarters and the city's international airport, the institute represented a completely new educational model, one designed by the very children it would serve. Robert stood in the central atrium on opening day, watching as the first 63 students from 22 countries explored the facility. The architecture itself reflected their input, circular collaboration spaces rather than rectangular classrooms, natural light flooding every area, and innovative learning technologies integrated throughout the building. "What do you think?" Nancy asked, joining him by the central fountain. She had recently completed her engineering degree and now served as the Institute's operations director, a position that allowed her to remain closely involved with Lily's education while utilizing her own considerable organizational talents. "I think we're witnessing the beginning of something historic," Robert replied honestly. The Institute operated on a unique model. Students maintained enrollment in their regular schools in their home countries, but attended the Institute for intensive 8-week residency periods 3 times per year. During these residencies, they worked on collaborative projects with their global peers, guided by mentors from various fields, but largely self-directed in their learning. Between residencies, they participated virtually, implementing project components in their local communities and continuing their regular education. This approach allowed them to maintain family connections and cultural roots while still accessing the specialized environment they needed for their intellectual development. For Lily, now 9 years old, the Institute represented the culmination of everything that had happened since that fateful day in the conference room. As the first residency period began, she found herself at the center of a community that understood her, friends who matched her intellectual pace while bringing their own unique perspectives and abilities. The curriculum was unlike anything implemented in traditional education. Rather than separating knowledge into distinct subjects, learning revolved around complex, real-world challenges that required integrating multiple disciplines. One week might focus on designing sustainable urban transportation systems, requiring students to incorporate physics, environmental science, social psychology, economics, and design thinking simultaneously. By the 3rd week of the first residency, something remarkable was happening. The children had naturally organized themselves into fluid, collaborative teams that formed, dissolved, and reformed based on project needs rather than adult direction. Those with strengths in particular areas became impromptu teachers to their peers, creating a knowledge exchange that far exceeded what the adult mentors could have structured. "They're essentially creating their own learning ecosystem," Elena remarked to Robert as they observed a spontaneous whiteboard session where 12 children from 8 countries were refining a complex algorithm together. Sheikh Abdullah, who visited regularly from Dubai, seemed particularly moved by the Institute's early success. One evening, as he and Robert watched the children in the main collaboration hub, he confessed, "I was a child like them once, seeing patterns others missed, understanding concepts beyond my years. But in my generation and my country, such gifts were often seen as strange, even threatening. I learned to hide my abilities, to conform. Robert looked at him with new understanding. Is that why you've committed so fully to this project? Abdullah nodded. These children will never know that particular loneliness. They will never doubt their value or question whether there's something wrong with their minds. That alone justifies everything we've invested here. As the first residency period neared its conclusion, the Institute hosted an innovation showcase for families, corporate partners, and educational leaders from around the world. The children presented 27 distinct projects, ranging from environmental technologies to medical devices to new educational platforms, all conceived, developed, and prototyped during their 8 weeks together. Lily's team, which included Tariq, Minseo, and 6 other children, presented a revolutionary water filtration system that combined nanotechnology with biologically inspired design elements. The system could remove contaminants from water sources with minimal energy requirements, potentially transforming access to clean water in developing regions. What's most remarkable, noted the head of a global environmental foundation as he examined the prototype, is that this combines approaches from fields that rarely collaborate. The biological filtration mechanism mimicking mollusk gills paired with semiconductor-inspired nanomaterials. It's brilliantly interdisciplinary. As the showcase concluded with a standing ovation for the children, Robert found himself standing next to Dr. Sarah Chen, who had joined the Institute as lead scientific advisor. "When you first brought Lily to my lab at MIT," she said quietly, "I thought I was meeting one exceptional child. I never imagined it would lead to all of this." Robert smiled. "Neither did I. But perhaps that's the lesson in everything that's happened. We never know which small moment, which seemingly random encounter, might change everything." He watched as Lily moved confidently among the showcase visitors, explaining complex technical concepts with clarity and enthusiasm. Surrounded by friends who shared her passion for discovery, she caught his eye across the room and flashed him a bright, happy smile, the normal, joyful expression of a child who had found her place in the world. In that moment, Robert realized that while the Institute represented an educational revolution, its greatest achievement was far simpler. It had given Lily and children like her the gift of belonging. As the Institute completed its first full year of operation, with 3 successful residency periods and remarkable innovations emerging from the children's collaborative work, interest from around the world grew exponentially. Educational delegations from 37 countries had visited to observe the model in action. Major foundations and technology companies offered partnership opportunities and funding. Government officials sought consultation on how elements of the Institute's approach might be adapted for public education systems. What had begun as a solution for a small group of exceptionally gifted children was evolving into a movement that might ultimately transform global approaches to education and innovation. For Robert, watching this expansion brought both pride and concern. The Institute's rapid growth required careful navigation to maintain its core mission. After particularly exhausting board meetings with potential partners, he often found himself seeking perspective from the person who had inspired it all. "The Swedish Education Ministry wants to implement our curriculum model nationwide," he told Lily during one of their regular mentorship sessions. Now 10 years old, she continued to divide her time between the Institute, her regular studies at Westridge Academy, and her consulting work with Mason Industries. Lily considered this news thoughtfully, twirling a pencil between her fingers. But their proposal changes the fundamental approach. They want to standardize everything. "Exactly the concern," Robert nodded. They're trying to turn an organic, adaptive system into something that can be measured and quantified through traditional metrics. That defeats the purpose, Lily said simply. The Institute works because it adapts to how our minds actually function, not how educational bureaucracies think they should function. This wisdom, delivered with a child's directness, continued to guide the Institute's development as it navigated offers of expansion, partnership, and replication. Rather than growing uncontrollably, the leadership team, which included Lily and 4 other students on its advisory council, chose to focus on quality over quantity, maintaining the original model while carefully documenting its methods for others to learn from. The approach paid off. By carefully preserving the integrity of the educational experience, the Institute produced innovations that spoke for themselves. Patents filed by student teams began attracting serious industry attention. Research papers co-authored by children and their mentors appeared in prestigious scientific journals. A medical diagnostic tool, developed by a team of 4 students aged 9 to 11, was being implemented in rural clinics across 3 continents. Sheikh Abdullah, whose financial contribution to the Institute had grown substantially over time, took particular interest in the real-world implementation of the students' innovations. Through his global business connections, he created pathways for the most promising projects to move from concept to practical application, particularly in developing regions. "Theory without action changes nothing," he told the students during one of his frequent visits. "Your brilliant ideas must reach the people who need them most." This philosophy led to the creation of the Institute's Implementation Corps, teams of older students who worked with partner organizations to adapt their innovations for specific regional needs and oversee initial deployments. These field experiences provided vital feedback that informed further development while giving the students direct experience with the practical challenges of implementing theoretical solutions in diverse contexts. For Lily, who'd been appointed as one of the first Implementation Corps team leaders at age 10, this experience proved transformative. During a 3-week deployment to rural India, where her team was implementing the water filtration system they had developed, she encountered challenges no laboratory could have prepared them for, from unexpected mineral content in local water sources, to power supply inconsistencies, to cultural factors affecting technology adoption. "We had to completely redesign certain components on site," she told Robert upon her return, her eyes bright with excitement despite evident exhaustion. "The theoretical model didn't account for real-world variables, but that's what made it valuable. We learned more from 3 weeks of implementation than from months of laboratory work." This integration of theory and practice became a hallmark of the Institute's approach, with deployment experiences feeding directly back into the innovation process. Students returned from field implementations with new insights, problem statements, and collaborative relationships with communities around the world. By the Institute's 18th month of operation, with its 3rd cohort of students now participating, the educational model had proven so successful that a waiting list of over 400 qualified children had developed. The question of expansion became unavoidable. "We need to grow, but without losing what makes this place special," Robert acknowledged during a strategy session with the leadership team, including Nancy, Eleanor, Abdullah, and several student representatives. "The question is how." Lily, who had been unusually quiet during the meeting, finally spoke up. "Maybe we're thinking about this wrong. Instead of making this institute bigger, what if we created a network of similar institutes around the world, each one small enough to maintain the community feeling, but connected globally like we are?" The adults exchanged glances, considering the implications. Abdullah was the first to respond. "A constellation rather than a single star," he said, nodding slowly. "Each institute adapted to its regional context, but sharing the same fundamental philosophy and connected through technology and exchange programs. And each new institute could be co-designed by graduates of this one, added Elena. Ensuring the student perspective remains central to the architecture and curriculum. As the discussion evolved, a vision emerged for a global network of autonomous but interconnected institutes, each maintaining the small, intimate community essential to the model's success, but collectively creating opportunities for hundreds more exceptional children worldwide. Later that evening, Robert found Lily sitting by the campus pond, watching koi fish swim in lazy circles beneath lily pads. "Your constellation idea has everyone excited," he told her, sitting on the bench beside her. "It could be the perfect solution." Lily smiled, but her expression held a hint of something Robert couldn't quite identify, a seriousness beyond her years. "I've been thinking about something else too," she said after a moment. "What's that?" "About what happens when children like us grow up." She looked up at him, her eyes questioning. "The Institute helps us now, but what about when we're adults? Will there be places where we can still work together, still collaborate the way we do here? Or will we have to adapt to traditional corporate structures that don't understand how our minds work?" The question caught Robert off guard, not because it was unexpected, but because he realized he'd been considering the same issue himself. These extraordinary children would someday become extraordinary adults. Would the world be ready for them? Or would their unique gifts be gradually constrained by conventional expectations and organizational structures? "That," he said finally, "is a question we should start addressing now, not later." The question of what would happen when the Institute's exceptional children grew into adulthood became the focus of intense discussion among the leadership team. While the educational model was proving remarkably successful, there was no existing pathway for these uniquely gifted individuals to transition into adult professional environments that could utilize their talents effectively. Traditional corporate structures would crush their collaborative creativity, Elena argued during one particularly heated planning session. Even the most innovative companies still operate within hierarchical frameworks that would feel constraining to minds accustomed to our fluid approach. Yet they must eventually integrate with the broader world, Abdullah countered. "We cannot create a parallel society for these children." Robert, who had been listening thoughtfully, finally spoke. "Perhaps we're approaching this from the wrong direction. Instead of asking how these children will fit into existing structures, we should be asking how existing structures might evolve to accommodate what they bring to the table." This perspective led to the creation of the Institute's Future Pathways Initiative, a long-term planning project focused on developing transitional models for exceptional minds entering adulthood. Rather than waiting until the children reached employment age, the initiative began immediately, with students themselves participating in the design process. Lily, now approaching her 11th birthday, became deeply involved in this work. Her experiences over the past 2 years, from saving Mason Industries to helping create the Institute to leading implementation projects in developing countries, had given her a unique perspective on organizational structures and their impact on innovation. "The problem," she explained during a presentation to potential corporate partners, "is that most organizations are designed around specialized roles with clear boundaries, but our minds don't work that way. We see connections across disciplines. We solve problems by integrating knowledge from seemingly unrelated fields. Traditional job descriptions would feel like intellectual prisons to us." The solution that emerged was the concept of innovation collectives, autonomous, self-organizing teams of exceptional minds working within established organizations but operating under different rules and expectations. These collectives would tackle the organization's most challenging problems with considerable freedom regarding methods, schedules, and collaborative approaches. To test this model, Robert established the first innovation collective within Mason Industries, recruiting 5 exceptional teenagers from the institute to work on specific manufacturing challenges during their school breaks. The experiment proved so successful that within 6 months, 3 other companies had established similar collectives with more expressing interest. "We're essentially creating a new category of knowledge work," Robert explained to shareholders. "These aren't employees in the traditional sense, but rather collaborative partners who bring extraordinary problem-solving capabilities to our most difficult challenges." For the children approaching adolescence, including Lily, these developments represented hope for a future where their gifts would continue to be valued and nurtured. But as the Future Pathways initiative gained momentum, a different challenge emerged, one that no one had fully anticipated. The Institute and its associated programs had received significant media attention, with numerous articles and documentaries highlighting the remarkable achievements of its young participants. This visibility, while beneficial for the educational model's expansion, created uncomfortable scrutiny for many of the children and their families. Lily, as the original inspiration for the initiative, received particular attention. Journalists sought interviews, documentary filmmakers requested access to her daily life, and her occasional public appearances drew crowds of curious onlookers. Even at Westridge Academy, where she still attended regular classes between institute residencies, she found herself increasingly treated as a curiosity rather than a student. The situation reached a breaking point when a major national magazine published a profile titled "The $1 Million Mind: How a Cleaning Lady's Daughter Saved an Empire and Launched an Educational Revolution." The article, while largely positive, included personal details about Lily and Nancy that they had never intended to share publicly. Nancy found Lily in tears after reading the piece online. "They make it sound like I'm some kind of specimen," Lily said, wiping her eyes angrily. "And the things they wrote about you, Mom, about your humble beginnings and lack of formal education, it's so condescending." Robert was furious when Nancy called to inform him of the situation. He immediately arranged for public relations specialists to help the family manage the unwanted attention, but the incident highlighted a broader issue affecting many of the Institute's students. "These children need privacy to develop normally," he insisted during an emergency meeting with the leadership team. "Their exceptional abilities shouldn't make them public property." Sheikh Abdullah, who had experienced similar issues with his nephew Tariq, agreed emphatically. "The media attention becomes a burden that interferes with their work and personal development. We must create boundaries." This crisis led to the establishment of strict media policies for all institute programs, limiting access to students and controlling the narrative around their work. Projects and innovations would continue to be publicized, but the children themselves would be protected from excessive personal exposure. For Lily, the experience reinforced something she had long felt, that there was a fundamental tension between her intellect and her desire for a normal childhood. While she thrived on complex challenges and collaborative innovation, she also yearned for ordinary experiences. Friendships based on personal connection rather than intellectual compatibility, time to simply play without purpose, the freedom to make mistakes without public scrutiny. One evening, during a quiet moment in Robert's office after most staff had gone home, she finally expressed these feelings. "Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I hadn't noticed that hidden clause in Sheikh Abdullah's contract," she admitted. "Would I just be a normal kid? Would that be better?" Robert considered her question carefully. "I can't answer whether it would be better," he said finally, "but I can tell you this. The gift you have is rare and precious. It's changed countless lives for the better, including my own. The challenge isn't choosing between your exceptional mind and a normal life. It's finding a way to honor both parts of yourself. Lily nodded slowly, absorbing his words. I think that's what all of us at the Institute are trying to figure out. How to be extraordinary without losing our humanity in the process. Indeed, as Lily approached her 12th birthday, the balancing act between her exceptional abilities and her need for normal childhood experiences became increasingly complex. The Institute continued to thrive, with 7 satellite locations now established across 4 continents and over 300 exceptional children participating in its programs worldwide. The innovation collectives had expanded to 23 partner organizations, creating pathways for older students to transition their talents into professional settings. Yet, for all this success, Lily herself felt increasingly torn between different aspects of her identity. Her work consulting with Mason Industries engineering teams remained intellectually stimulating. Her leadership role at the Institute provided deep satisfaction through mentoring younger students. Her involvement with implementation projects around the world gave her a sense of purpose and impact. But something was missing, something fundamental that she couldn't quite articulate until a chance encounter during summer break. Nancy had insisted on a 2-week vacation with no work, no projects, and no institute responsibilities, just mother and daughter spending time at a lakeside cabin in northern Michigan. For the first few days, Lily had been restless, her mind seeking problems to solve, patterns to analyze, but gradually, as the rhythms of nature and unstructured time worked their magic, she began to relax into a different mode of being. On their 5th day at the lake, Lily met Emma, a local girl her own age, who was spending summer with her grandparents in a nearby cabin. Emma knew nothing about Lily's accomplishments or abilities. She simply saw another 12-year-old to go swimming and exploring with. Their friendship developed with a simplicity and immediacy that Lily had rarely experienced. They built sandcastles, hunted for interesting rocks along the shoreline, told ghost stories around evening campfires, and giggled about trivial things that would have seemed beneath discussion at the Institute. Emma taught Lily to fish and paddleboard. Lily showed Emma how to identify constellations and predict weather patterns from cloud formations. Not once did they discuss advanced mathematics, engineering principles, or global innovation. Not once did Emma treat Lily as anything other than a normal girl on summer vacation. When the 2 weeks ended and it was time to return home, Lily found herself unexpectedly emotional about leaving. I wish I could stay longer, she told Nancy as they packed the car. Nancy studied her daughter thoughtfully. You really connected with Emma, didn't you? Lily nodded. It was different. At the Institute, everything is always about our work, our projects, our minds. With Emma, it was just about having fun together. She liked me for me, not for what my brain can do. This insight proved profound for both Lily and the adults who had been guiding her development. Upon their return, Nancy arranged a meeting with Robert, Elena, and the Institute's child psychologist, Dr. Martinez. Lily needs more balance, Nancy explained. For all the wonderful opportunities she has, she's missing fundamental experiences that children her age typically have, friends who know her as a person rather than a prodigy. Time to explore interests that have nothing to do with her intellectual gifts. Space to just be a kid. Dr. Martinez nodded emphatically. This is actually common among exceptional children. They become so defined by their abilities that other aspects of their development receive less attention. The long-term psychological consequences can be significant. Identity issues, difficulty with intimate relationships, even burnout. The conversation led to a careful reassessment of Lily's schedule and commitments. While her work at the Institute remained important, boundaries were established to ensure she had time for normal childhood activities. She joined a local soccer team, took piano lessons, struggling with them in a way that proved strangely satisfying, and arranged regular video chats with Emma to maintain their friendship. More significantly, the insights from Lily's experience informed broader changes at the Institute itself. The curriculum was expanded to include more emphasis on social, emotional development, creative expression, and physical activities with no specific learning objectives. Time for unstructured play became as valued as time for intellectual collaboration. "We've been so focused on nurturing their extraordinary minds," Robert acknowledged during a staff meeting, "that we've sometimes forgotten they are still children with all the developmental needs that entails." Sheikh Abdullah, upon hearing about these adjustments, shared his own perspective. "In my culture, we speak of the complete person, mind, body, heart, and spirit in harmony. Perhaps in our excitement about these children's intellectual capabilities, we have neglected the other elements needed for true fulfillment." For Lily, the rebalancing of her life created space for new discoveries about herself. She found unexpected joy in soccer, despite having no particular talent for it. Her piano playing remained mediocre, but brought a different kind of satisfaction than her brilliant engineering work. Most importantly, she developed friendships outside the Institute, ordinary connections based on shared interests and personal affinity rather than intellectual compatibility. As her 12th birthday approached, Lily reflected on the journey of the past 5 years, from the moment she had noticed the hidden clause in Abdullah's contract to the global educational movement that had grown from that single observation. The trajectory had been extraordinary by any measure, yet she found herself increasingly valuing ordinary moments, laughing with friends, helping her mother cook dinner, riding her bicycle aimlessly through neighborhood streets on summer evenings. "I think I'm finally figuring it out," she told Robert during one of their regular mentorship sessions. "Figuring what out?" he asked. "How to be both extraordinary and ordinary at the same time," she replied with a smile. "How to honor my mind without letting it define my entire existence." Robert nodded, understanding the profound importance of this insight. "That," he said, "might be your most brilliant discovery yet." The balance Lily had found between her exceptional abilities and her need for normal childhood experiences proved more precarious than anyone had anticipated. Shortly after her 12th birthday, a series of events disrupted the carefully constructed equilibrium, beginning with an unexpected announcement from Sheikh Abdullah. During a quarterly review meeting at the Institute, Abdullah revealed that he had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of pancreatic cancer. His physicians gave him between 6 and 12 months to live. The news sent shockwaves through the Institute leadership, not only because of personal concern for Abdullah, but also because of his central role in the Institute's global expansion. "My affairs are in order," Abdullah assured them. "My financial commitments to the Institute and its satellite locations will continue through my family foundation. But there are aspects of my involvement that cannot be replaced through financial means alone, particularly my business connections that have been so crucial for implementing student innovations in developing regions." Robert immediately pledged to strengthen Mason Industries' involvement to help fill this gap, but everyone recognized that Abdullah's personal influence throughout the Middle East, Africa, and parts of Asia would be impossible to fully replace. For Lily, the news affected her deeply on a personal level. Despite their initial meeting as adversaries, she and Abdullah had developed a warm relationship over the years. His respect for her mind had never felt condescending, and his guidance on navigating between different cultural contexts had proven invaluable during her implementation work abroad. "Is there anything we can do?" she asked Robert privately after the meeting. "Any treatment options he hasn't considered?" Robert shook his head sadly. "He's consulted the best specialists worldwide. The cancer was discovered too late for effective intervention." The situation with Abdullah coincided with another significant change. Elena Vasquez, who had been Lily's primary technical mentor since the beginning, accepted a prestigious position leading a new quantum computing initiative at Stanford University. While she would remain connected to the institute as an advisor, her daily involvement with Lily's engineering work would end. These changes might have been manageable in isolation, but they were followed by a third disruption when Nancy was offered a remarkable opportunity, a position leading the development of educational programs for gifted children in underserved communities across Southeast Asia. The role aligned perfectly with her recently completed graduate studies in educational psychology and her practical experience at the institute, but it would require extensive travel for at least 18 months. "I don't have to take it," Nancy assured Lily as they discussed the possibility. "Your needs come first." But Lily recognized both the importance of the work and what it meant for her mother's professional development. "You've put my opportunities ahead of your own for years," she said with surprising maturity. "It's time for you to pursue what you're passionate about." With Nancy traveling regularly, Lily's living arrangements required reconsideration. Though nearly 13, she was still too young to live independently, even with staff supervision at their condominium. After exploring various options, Robert proposed a solution that seemed initially surprising, but ultimately logical. Lily would live with him and his wife, Catherine, during Nancy's extended absences. "Catherine and I have plenty of room, and we've been discussing this possibility," he explained to Nancy. "It would give Lily stability while allowing you to focus on your work without constant worry." Nancy hesitated, concerned about imposing on Robert's family life. "Are you sure Catherine wouldn't mind? Taking on someone else's child is a huge responsibility." "Actually, it was Catherine's suggestion," Robert replied with a smile. "She's quite fond of Lily, as you know, and we've never had children of our own." This arrangement created yet another dimension to Lily's already complex life. While she had known Robert's wife for years and always enjoyed her company, living in their home part-time represented a significant adjustment. Catherine Mason was a renowned concert pianist whose schedule of performances and masterclasses kept her traveling almost as frequently as Nancy would be. But when home, she brought a different energy and perspective to Lily's life. Unlike Robert, Elena, or the other technical mentors who had guided Lily's development, Catherine's passion was art rather than science. Her home was filled with music, literature, and visual art from around the world. Her friends, who often visited for dinner parties and informal gatherings, included composers, writers, painters, and philosophers rather than engineers or business leaders. For Lily, immersion in this environment opened new neural pathways. She began to see connections between artistic expression and scientific innovation that had previously eluded her. Catherine's approach to music, the disciplined practice combined with emotional interpretation, offered parallels to engineering that Lily found fascinating. "Art and science are not as separate as people think," Catherine told her one evening as they sat together at the piano. "Both require technical mastery and creative vision. Both seek patterns and meaning in the world." With Catherine's encouragement, Lily began exploring artistic pursuits alongside her technical work. She took up drawing, not the precise technical diagrams she had always created, but expressive sketches that captured feelings as much as forms. She experimented with poetry as a way to process her complex emotions about the changes in her life. She even attempted composing simple piano pieces, though her technical skills remained modest. These new dimensions added richness to Lily's development, but also created challenges in managing her time and energy. Between her ongoing work at the Institute, her engineering consultations with Mason Industries, her regular academic studies, her new artistic explorations, her athletic activities, and her friendships, the delicate balance she had found began to fracture. The breaking point came during the fall semester of her 13th year. While preparing for an important presentation to potential implementation partners for a new educational technology she had helped develop, Lily also faced midterm exams at school, a soccer tournament with her team, and a piano recital Catherine had encouraged her to participate in, despite her limited skills. The night before the institute presentation, Robert found Lily still awake at 2 a.m., surrounded by notes and diagrams, her eyes red from exhaustion. "You need sleep," he said gently. "I can't," she replied, her voice tight with stress. "The presentation isn't ready, and if it goes poorly, the implementation funding might fall through. All our work would be wasted." Robert sat beside her, noting the scattered piano sheet music and half-finished homework assignments, pushed aside to make room for the presentation materials. "You're trying to do too much, Lily." "I'm fine," she insisted, though her trembling hands suggested otherwise. "No," Robert said firmly. "You're not. And it's our fault. Mine, your mother's, the Institute's. We've been so focused on helping you manage different aspects of your life that we've lost sight of the total burden we've placed on you." The recognition that Lily was being pulled in too many directions led to another careful reassessment of her commitments and responsibilities. Nancy temporarily postponed her international work to remain closer to home. Robert reduced Lily's consulting hours at Mason Industries. The Institute modified its expectations regarding her involvement in implementation projects. Even Catherine adjusted her encouragement of Lily's artistic explorations to ensure they remained enjoyable rather than becoming additional performance pressures. These adjustments helped restore some equilibrium to Lily's life, but the experience had revealed a fundamental tension that couldn't be entirely resolved through schedule management. Her exceptional mind naturally sought engagement with complex problems and creative challenges. Restricting these opportunities too severely would address the symptoms of overcommitment, but might stifle the very qualities that made her extraordinary. The situation prompted deep conversations among the adults who cared for her. "We need to help her develop better discernment," Nancy suggested during one such discussion. "She needs to learn which opportunities to pursue and which to decline, not because she can't handle them intellectually, but because a meaningful life requires focus. And she needs to understand that her value isn't determined by her productivity," Catherine added, "that she matters as a person, not just as a problem solver." Robert, who had been quietly reflective throughout the conversation, finally spoke. "I think I've been part of the problem. From the moment she spotted that hidden clause in Abdullah's contract, I've been so focused on nurturing her exceptional abilities that I may have unintentionally reinforced the idea that her worth comes from what her mind can do." This realization led to a subtle but significant shift in how the adults in Lily's life interacted with her. While they continued to support her intellectual development and celebrate her achievements, they made a conscious effort to separate their appreciation for her as a person from their admiration of her abilities. Simple statements like, "I enjoy spending time with you," or "I'm glad you're in my life," became as important as praise for her latest innovation. For Lily, now in her early teens, these messages arrived at a crucial developmental stage. Like all adolescents, she was wrestling with questions of identity and self-worth, but her exceptional abilities complicated this normal developmental process. The revised approach from her adult mentors provided a foundation for healthier self-concept formation. Sheikh Abdullah, despite his declining health, continued to offer wisdom that proved particularly valuable during this period. During what would be his final visit to the Institute, he spent an afternoon with Lily in the campus gardens, sharing perspectives shaped by both his business experiences and his confrontation with mortality. "I have achieved much in my life," he told her, his once imposing frame now thin and fragile. built companies, influenced economies, accumulated wealth beyond reasonable need. But approaching the end, I find those achievements matter less than I expected. What remains meaningful are the connections I've formed, the lives I've touched, the beauty I've experienced. He paused, watching a butterfly alight on a nearby flower. Your mind is a magnificent gift, Lily, but it is not who you are, merely one aspect of a complete being. Never forget to nurture all dimensions of yourself. 2 months later, Sheikh Abdullah passed away peacefully in Dubai, surrounded by family. The Institute observed a week of remembrance, celebrating his contributions and vision. For Lily, the loss reinforced the wisdom he had shared during their final conversation, the importance of human connection and the perspective that comes from recognizing life's impermanence. As Lily navigated her 14th year, the lessons from this challenging period gradually integrated into her approach to life. She became more selective about which projects and opportunities she pursued, evaluating them not just for intellectual stimulation, but for alignment with her evolving sense of purpose. She developed better boundaries, learning to say no without guilt when necessary. She cultivated friendships and interests that had nothing to do with her exceptional abilities. Most importantly, she began to see her gift not as a burden of responsibility or a source of identity, but as one tool among many for creating meaning in her life and contributing to the world. This evolution became evident during a career exploration day at her school, when a counselor asked about her future plans. In previous years, Lily might have outlined ambitious goals related to engineering innovations or global educational reform. Instead, she responded with unexpected simplicity. "I want to use my abilities to solve problems that matter," she said, "but I also want to create art that moves people. I want deep friendships and eventually a family of my own. I want to experience the world's beauty and help others do the same." The counselor looked surprised. "Those are broader life goals rather than specific career plans." Lily smiled. "Exactly. I'm learning that a meaningful life isn't defined by what you achieve professionally, but by how fully you engage with all aspects of being human." This perspective represented a significant maturation in Lily's thinking, an integration of the various influences that had shaped her development since that fateful day when, as a 7-year-old, she had noticed a hidden clause in a contract that would have destroyed Mason Industries. Robert, upon hearing about this conversation from Nancy, felt both pride and a sense of wonder at how far Lily had come. "She's wiser at 14 than most people become in a lifetime," he remarked. "She's had extraordinary teachers," Nancy replied. "Not just about engineering and mathematics, but about what truly matters in life. You've been one of the most important." Robert shook his head modestly. "I think we've all learned as much from her as she has from us." Indeed, the impact had been mutual. Mason Industries had been transformed not just by the technological innovations Lily had helped develop, but by the more human-centered approach to business that had emerged from Robert's experiences with the Institute. The educational model, pioneered through the initiative, had influenced school systems worldwide. The innovation collectives were redefining how exceptional minds could contribute within organizational structures. What had begun with a child's observant eye had evolved into something none of them could have imagined. A ripple effect of positive change, extending far beyond the original moment of crisis, averted. As Lily's 16th birthday approached, the world had changed significantly from the day she had first entered the conference room with her mother nearly 9 years earlier. The Mason Al-Farsi Institute network had expanded to 12 locations across 6 continents, serving over 800 exceptional children annually. The educational methodologies pioneered there had influenced curriculum development in school systems worldwide. The innovation collectives established in partnership with various organizations had demonstrated that unconventional talent could thrive within adaptable corporate structures. Lily herself had evolved from a precocious child into a poised young woman with a remarkable capacity for integrating her exceptional intellectual abilities with emotional intelligence and creative expression. She remained deeply involved with the Institute as a mentor to younger students, while pursuing her own education through an individualized program that combined traditional academic subjects with practical applications and artistic exploration. Nancy had completed her international work developing educational programs in Southeast Asia and returned to a leadership position at the Institute's main campus, bringing valuable cross-cultural insights that further enriched the curriculum. Her relationship with Lily had matured into a balanced partnership, with mutual respect tempering the natural parent-child dynamic. Robert, now in his mid-60s, had begun transitioning leadership of Mason Industries to carefully selected successors while focusing more of his energy on the educational foundation that had grown from Lily's initial inspiration. Though he remained actively engaged in both organizations, he had deliberately created space for new perspectives and approaches. The catalyst for the next significant evolution came unexpectedly during a routine quarterly review of the Institute's global programs. Dr. Mahmoud Al-Farsi, Sheikh Abdullah's nephew and successor as head of the family's educational foundation, presented findings from a longitudinal study tracking outcomes for the Institute's earlier participants, now young adults entering university or professional settings. "The results are extraordinary," Mahmoud explained, displaying complex data visualizations. "Our alumni are thriving intellectually, with unprecedented achievements in their chosen fields. But more importantly, they're demonstrating remarkable psychological health and social integration, outcomes that differ significantly from historical patterns for exceptionally gifted individuals." This confirmation of the Institute's success in nurturing balanced development was gratifying, but not entirely surprising to those who had been involved from the beginning. What came next, however, opened entirely new possibilities. "We've identified a pattern in how these young adults are choosing to apply their talents," Mahmoud continued. "Rather than pursuing traditional academic or corporate paths exclusively, over 70% are gravitating toward what we might call convergence zones, areas where multiple disciplines intersect to address complex societal challenges." Nalad, the presentation, highlighted examples. A 19-year-old Institute alumnus who had developed innovative drought-resistant agricultural systems integrating traditional farming knowledge with advanced water management technology. An 18-year-old who had created a mental health platform combining neuroscience, artificial intelligence, and community psychology principles. A 20-year-old team collaborating on decentralized renewable energy systems adapted for remote communities. These young innovators aren't content to work within established disciplinary boundaries, Mahmoud concluded. They're naturally drawn to the intersections where different fields meet, what some researchers call white space problems that fall between traditional domains of expertise. The implications were profound. The Institute had succeeded in developing exceptional minds capable of transcending conventional categories of knowledge. These young adults were positioning themselves precisely where complex global challenges required integrative thinking. At the boundaries between technology and human systems, between scientific advancement and ethical considerations, between theoretical understanding and practical implementation. For Lily, who had been listening intently throughout the presentation, these findings resonated deeply with her own evolving sense of purpose. At nearly 16, she was beginning to consider more seriously what contribution she might ultimately make to the world. "This confirms what I've been feeling," she said during the discussion that followed. "The most interesting problems aren't contained within neat disciplinary boundaries. They exist in the spaces between established fields, and that's exactly where minds like ours naturally operate." Robert nodded thoughtfully. "The Institute has always emphasized interdisciplinary approaches, but perhaps we've been thinking too conventionally about how our students might eventually apply their abilities." "What if," Lily suggested, leaning forward with growing excitement, "we created a structure specifically designed to harness this natural tendency? Not just educational programs for developing exceptional minds, but platforms where those minds can collaborate on the world's most challenging problems across disciplinary boundaries." The conversation sparked by this question continued long into the evening, with Lily, Robert, Nancy, Mahmoud, and other Institute leaders exploring possibilities that went far beyond their original vision. What emerged was the concept of integration hubs, collaborative spaces where Institute alumni and other exceptional individuals could address complex societal challenges through radically interdisciplinary approaches. Unlike traditional research institutions organized around specific disciplines, these hubs would be structured around problem domains: sustainable development, public health, educational access, climate resilience, with teams composed of individuals bringing diverse expertise and perspectives. The organizational structure would build on lessons learned from the Institute's educational model and the innovation collectives, emphasizing self-organization, fluid collaboration, and direct implementation of solutions. "This could become a new kind of institution entirely," Robert observed as the concept took shape. "Neither academic, nor corporate, nor governmental, but incorporating elements of all three while transcending their limitations." For Lily, the possibility represented a natural evolution of everything that had developed since she had first spotted the hidden clause in Abdullah's contract. From that single moment of observation had grown an educational revolution that had nurtured hundreds of exceptional minds. Now those minds were ready to collaboratively address the world's most pressing challenges in entirely new ways. The integration hub concept rapidly gained momentum, with planning teams formed to develop implementation strategies for the first prototype location. Potential partners from various sectors expressed interest in supporting the initiative. Even before formal announcements were made, word spread through the Institute's global network, generating excitement among current students and alumni alike. As her 16th birthday arrived, Lily found herself at another pivotal moment, not unlike the day she had entered that conference room with her mother, though with a vastly different context and level of awareness. Then, a child's observant eye had changed the trajectory of many lives through a single insight. Now, a young woman's integrated vision might help create structures where exceptional minds could collaborate to address humanity's greatest challenges. During a quiet moment at her birthday celebration, surrounded by friends and family, Lily shared this reflection with Robert. "It's strange to think how different everything might have been if Mom had found childcare that day," she said. "If I hadn't been in that conference room at that exact moment." Robert smiled thoughtfully. "Life often hinges on such seemingly random circumstances. But I believe exceptional minds like yours inevitably find ways to make their contributions. The hidden clause was simply the universe's particular mechanism for introducing you to the world." 6 months later, on a bright spring morning, Lily stood at the edge of a construction site where the first integration hub was taking shape. The facility, located on a reclaimed brownfield site that had once housed an abandoned manufacturing plant, would soon become a center for collaborative innovation addressing challenges in sustainable urban development. At 16 and a half, Lily had grown into a composed young woman whose exceptional intellectual abilities were now balanced by emotional maturity and practical wisdom beyond her years. She had recently completed an accelerated high school curriculum and was considering multiple university offers, though her educational path would likely remain as unconventional as everything else in her life. "It's really happening," Nancy said, joining her daughter at the observation point. "From concept to reality in just 6 months." Lily nodded, watching construction teams installing the distinctive curved solar panels that would provide much of the facility's energy. "The response has been overwhelming. We already have commitment from 27 Institute alumni to participate in the first cohort, plus partnerships with 12 organizations across different sectors." The speed with which the integration hub concept had moved from idea to implementation reflected both the compelling nature of the vision and the network of relationships that had developed through the Institute over the years. Financial support had come from multiple sources, including the Mason Educational Foundation, the Al-Farsi Family Trust, corporate partners, and governmental innovation funds. Robert approached, accompanied by a distinguished older man Lily didn't recognize. "Lily, Nancy, I'd like you to meet someone special," he said. "This is James Chen, the architect who designed the original Horizon Tower, where our story began." Lily shook the man's hand, surprised by the connection. "The building where Mom was cleaning when I spotted the hidden clause in Sheikh Abdullah's contract." James nodded, smiling warmly. "The very same. Robert and I have known each other for decades. When he told me about this project and its remarkable origin story, I knew I had to meet you." As they toured the construction site together, James shared architectural insights about both the original Horizon Tower and this new facility. "Buildings shape human interaction in profound ways," he explained. "In corporate towers like Horizon, the design typically reinforces hierarchy and separation. Here, we've created spaces that facilitate the fluid collaboration your integration hub concept demands." The tour concluded at the central atrium, where construction was most advanced. Unlike conventional buildings with rigid divisions between floors and departments, this space featured interconnected platforms at different levels, linked by walkways and communal areas designed to promote spontaneous interaction across traditional boundaries. "It's perfect," Lily said, taking in the innovative design, the physical embodiment of interdisciplinary thinking. As James continued discussing architectural details with Nancy, Robert guided Lily to a quiet corner overlooking the entire site. "I have some news," he said. "Sheikh Abdullah's family archives recently discovered something significant, documents from before our original negotiation that reveal he had been researching Mason Industries for nearly 2 years before approaching us about the merger." "Why is that significant?" Lily asked. "Because included in those documents are detailed analyses of our intellectual property portfolio, with particular focus on the precision engineering patents that would have been transferred through the hidden clause you discovered." Lily's eyes widened as she understood the implication. So, it wasn't just an opportunistic trick. He had specifically targeted those patents all along. Robert nodded. "Apparently so, which makes your intervention even more remarkable. You didn't just spot a casual deception. You uncovered a carefully planned strategy that had been in development for years." The revelation provided new context for everything that had followed from that moment. Sheikh Abdullah's eventual transformation from adversary to partner seemed all the more significant given the depth of his original intentions. The educational initiative that had grown from their unlikely collaboration gained additional layers of meaning. "I wonder what he would think of all this," Lily said, gesturing toward the emerging integration hub, "whether he could have imagined where that failed contract would ultimately lead." "I asked myself the same question," Robert replied. "In his final months, Abdullah told me something I've never forgotten. He said that the greatest accomplishment of his life wasn't building his business empire, but helping create the Institute, transforming a moment of attempted deception into a legacy of positive impact. As the afternoon progressed, more visitors arrived to tour the construction site, Institute alumni, who would be among the first hub participants, corporate and governmental partners, journalists documenting the innovative concept. Lily found herself sharing the vision with diverse stakeholders, her communication skills having developed alongside her technical abilities over the years. One conversation particularly stood out. A journalist asked about the connection between her childhood observation that had saved Mason Industries and the integration hub concept now taking physical form. "They seem like entirely different circumstances," the journalist noted. "What links them in your mind?" Lily considered the question thoughtfully. "They both involve seeing patterns that others miss, connections that become visible when you approach problems without conventional constraints. The hidden clause was buried in technical language that most people skimmed over. Similarly, many of society's most pressing challenges exist in the spaces between established fields where traditional experts rarely focus." Later, as the visitors departed and the construction teams concluded their day's work, Lily found herself alone in the central atrium with Robert and Nancy, the three individuals whose lives had been most directly transformed by that moment in the conference room 9 years earlier. "It's incredible to think about the chain of events," Nancy said, her voice soft with wonder. "From a single observation to all of this." Robert nodded. "From a potentially disastrous merger to a global educational revolution, and now this entirely new approach to collaborative innovation. All because a 7-year-old girl happened to be in the right place at the right time, with the right kind of mind to see what everyone else missed." Lily smiled, feeling the weight of the journey and the promise of what lay ahead. "I don't think it was just about seeing what others missed," she said after a moment. "It was about what happened afterward, how we all chose to respond to that moment. You could have simply thanked me and moved on. Instead, you recognized something larger and helped create structures where other exceptional minds could flourish." As twilight settled over the construction site, the three stood together in comfortable silence, watching as automatic lighting systems activated throughout the emerging facility. The distinctive architecture took on a magical quality in the gathering dusk, a physical manifestation of the vision they had collectively nurtured from unlikely beginnings. In that moment, Lily felt a profound sense of completion, not an ending, but the fulfillment of one chapter and the promising beginning of another. What had started with a child noticing a hidden clause had evolved into something none of them could have imagined, yet somehow felt inevitable in retrospect. "The most extraordinary journeys," Robert said softly, seeming to read her thoughts, "often begin with the simplest observations." Nancy put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. "And the most meaningful legacies grow from how we choose to nurture those moments of insight." Lily nodded, watching the integration hub glowing with possibility in the evening light. 9 years ago, she had simply been a cleaning lady's daughter with an observant eye and an unusual mind. Now she stood at the threshold of a future shaped by that single moment and the countless choices that had followed, a future where exceptional minds might collaborate across boundaries to address humanity's greatest challenges. As they turned to leave, Lily took one last look at the emerging structure. Whatever specific innovations might eventually emerge from the integration hub, its true significance lay in the recognition that extraordinary potential often appears in unexpected forms and places, needing only the right conditions to flourish and transform the world.